Okay, I'm here working on the Honda Odyssey project. I'm charging the battery back up. We'll get into that for a second. But I was running it, getting it up to temperature, cycling some heat through it, see if what leaks, what doesn't leak, what I might need to adjust with the coolant and the exhaust even, or the fueling system. I have it tuned up a bit so it'll run fine on the stand. I'll probably have to make some adjustments when I have it down on the ground and I put it under a load. It'll probably need some fuel-air mixture adjustments. But it's a little bit cold in here because I do have the door open. And unfortunately, it's kind of a shitty freezing rain kind of day right now. It's not doing much but misting, but it's really wet out there. But it's dry in here, and once I let the two-stroke air get out of here or circulate, I'll be able to shut the door and turn the heat back on. So on the back here, I got a new universal snowmobile pod filter, or it's actually not really a snowmobile filter per se, but it's just the universal off-road filter for Mikuni carburetors. The old air filter thing that I had on there would have worked, but the air filter foam that I had in there was not air filter foam. It was actually seat cushion foam that I bought from Walmart, and it just pretty much choked out the engine, so I would have to run it without the air filter. So I just bought this universal off-road pod filter from Mikuni carburetors. I just had to oil it up, stuck it on there, and it works flawlessly. So that's how I was running it just now. The radiator does a very good job of cooling the engine. It's a little bit warm to the touch, but I could cycle the thermostat off and on and watch the temperature, rise and fall a little bit as the heat cycled through the radiator back of the engine to keep everything cool. So right now, or for now, it's able to keep up. Unfortunately, this engine does not have its own charging system. So the battery is pretty much just getting drained as I use it, which is unfortunate, but just kind of how it is. So if you were to buy a brand new snowmobile system, or a brand new snowmobile rather, it'll have a charging system, because there's not a snowmobile that exists that doesn't have electric start, heated this, heated that, or heated that. This engine is much older, it's out of the 80s. So back then, not every snowmobile had electric start. And that's kind of the barometer on whether or not your snowmobile engine has a charging system or it doesn't. So this engine didn't have electric start from the factory, so it doesn't have a charging coil. It has a light coil in the engine that would produce enough power to light up a headlight and like the lights on your dash, as in the tach and speedometer, but it doesn't have a coil that's meant to charge a battery. So I kind of use the battery to power the fan, and it can or will slowly drain the battery as time goes on. So I'll kind of have to sort of, I guess, always trickle charge that battery back up, over the course of a week or something to keep it healthy. But that's just how it is, unless I find another way to keep it charged or something, or if there's a way to add a charging coil to this engine that's not super expensive and does not doesn't involve going too deep into the engine or something like that. I might have to research that. But yeah, the big thing I need to do ASAP while I'm here working on it is get the brakes working. That caliper is completely seized. The cable doesn't seem like it's seized, but this caliper is seized solid. Luckily, well, I don't know if it was luckily, but it's seized open, I guess, so it's not clamping down on the brake. But you can't use the brakes at all, which makes it really sketchy to ride, because I did ride it a little bit once last time I was here, just to sort of get a feel for everything, and it moves along pretty well, but there's literally zero brakes. They just 100% don't work. So I got to take that caliper out, free it up, and get the brakes working. Okay, it took some doing, but there is no longer a brake caliper there. And I also had to remove my brake cable itself, because both the caliper and the cable were seized. So hanging up right here is the brake cable. I was able to free it up by yanking on it a few times, and then I've been squirting PB Blaster in through the top and sort of letting it drain all the way down through, and then going and pulling on it back and forth. And I got it working pretty damn good, actually. You're looking at the end of the cable. So like I said, it works pretty damn good now. Shouldn't be stuck at all. So here on the bench, I have the caliper body itself and the pads. Now, it took some doing, but after some soaking and whatnot, I was able to remove the pad out this way like it's supposed to, and then this pad up here on the other side doesn't move, but it popped out as well. So what I need to do is take some emery cloth and polish up this surface in here so that this pad will go in there and move back and forth freely. It's got some grit on it, and you can see on the side of the pad there was some surface rust built up on there, so I got to go ahead and clean that off. Then this is the part of the caliper that the cable attaches to. I got to go and make sure all this is freed up. I'll probably pack in some anti-seize grease or something, maybe some caliper grease if I could get my hands on some, just to sort of keep that operating freely, because it was a little bit stuck. Just as stuck as those pads were, and just as stuck as the cable was. So, yeah. So the idea is that I'm polishing that up, and the caliper, they won't seize the brakes already. At least it's the same from the battery. That's enough for them to seize the brakes. I don't know what, first, idea for brakes, it's a battery. What's staying with somebody has been here before, so let's decrease. It's probably like the caliper is still further. You know what? This thing was left outside, water's taking it. Instead of invited there, just sort of, what is it? Hopefully, I guess. Or, I think it's going to make Alrighty then, this half of it is looking much better than it before. This caliper is actually supposed to just be bare. I don't know, for some reason it was painted at some point, but it's all cleaned up and operates smoothly. I cleaned up the pad itself a little bit, and it slides in and out of there nice and free now. This O-ring here goes in the O-ring groove right there. It's a little bit damaged, so I'm going to go open up an O-ring kit and see if I can't find an O-ring to replace that with. But other than that O-ring, this is all set to go. I just got to go ahead and put that back together and clean it up, make sure it operates smoothly, and then it'll be good to go. Okay, I have it all working again, aside from reinstallation. So I took all this stuff apart, cleaned it up a little bit, lubed her a bit, and basically it works like a bigger, more complicated version of the brake system that's on the racing lawnmower. So all that happens is when the cable pulls on this, it pushes out on the plunger. There's sort of like a ramp system, and this screw can get turned in or out to move this further in or out to compensate for the wear that happens on the caliper itself over on this side. So it would go back together like so. The cable gets fed up there, hooks on this and pulls it down, and that squishes the brake caliper together. So I'm gonna turn this back into a caliper and then get it all back on the Honda Odyssey. Gonna be like magic. You won't even know it's happening. brakes kind of do something now. They need to be worked in a bit. The rotor itself was kind of rusted, now it looks a little glazed. So they'll work in as you use them a little bit, I take it, or I hope. Otherwise, I'm going to need to replace the pads or something. But the caliper and the cable is now functional. I did some adjusting to take some of the slack out of the cable. But, you know, time will tell if I need to replace more parts or something, and when I actually put it on the ground, see how well it actually stops. But I put it through another heat cycle. It fared well. The only thing that happened this time is the header bolts backed out, so I'll need to take all of them out, put Loctite on them, and then tighten them back down really good. But gonna pack up and call it a day.